Hey there, all my friends and family all joining together for another night of reading. Tonight I want to read this book right here, The Marvelous Mud House, a story of finding fullness and joy. It's written by April Graney, illustrations by Alida Massari, and it's published by BHKids from Brahman and Holman. So this is a great book about how we need to remember how blessed we are when others are not so much. So let's go ahead and get started on this. It says, on the edge of a lush mountain in Kenya sat a marvelous mud house where George and his mother lived. What made this mud house marvelous was the marvelous thing that happened there. Each morning, as the sun flooded the great rift valley below, George searched the terraced garden for corn, mangoes, and potatoes while Mama George milked the goat. Then they loaded their baskets on their backs and began their long walk to the village. Yep. Down, down, down one side of their mountain and up, up, up the side of the next mountain they walked. And every day Mama George sang, "We're rich, my son, we're rich in love, strength, and life. The giver of these hears every cry. Let's lift up our hands to the God who provides." One morning, George could hear the children singing from the schoolhouse. "Mama," he said with a sigh, "all my friends are in school. I want to go too, but how will we pay the fees?" Mama George raised her eyes and replied, "Let's keep working, George. God will provide." Do you know they go to school in Kenya? Yeah, got some great schools over there. Far away on the edge of the Oklahoma woods sat a hungry ranch house where the Smith family lived. What made this house hungry was the feeling of always wanting more. The 5 Smith children, Olivia, Ruth, Thomas, Tucker, and Ben, had toy trucks and trains, footballs and board games, pretty dolls and stuffed bears, 1 brown and white Beagle, and 1 whopping big car. But cleanup time brought weeping and whines, and with closets overflowing with toys, they still begged their parents, "Oh, please buy us a little bit more." Then one day, an adventure began. The Smith family hopped on a plane and flew up in the sky, over the land, and across the ocean. Where in the world do you think they're going? Let's turn the page and find out. To Kenya. That's where George lives, George and his mom. They flew to Kenya, this family did. There they saw a new world full of yawning rhinos, graceful giraffes, playful monkeys, and mischievous baboons. They saw boys selling bananas and girls carrying water on their heads. And there in a village market, the Smith family met George and his mother. Bet they were selling corn and mangoes, you think? Every day, the Smiths stopped to buy corn and chat with George and Mama George. The youngest Smith, Ben, gathered the courage to ask, "Where do you live? Is it very far?" Mama George leaned over with a smile. "We can show you. Please come to our house for dinner." So down, down, down one side of the mountain and up, up, up the side of the next mountain went the 2 families. As they passed the schoolhouse, Ben asked, "Is that your school, George?" His friend shrugged. "I hope to go there someday if we get the school fees." "God will provide," Mama George reminded. As they walked, she taught the Smith family her song. "We're rich, my friends, rich in love, strength, and life. The giver of these hears every cry. Let's lift up our hands to the God who provides." I'm sure she had a beautiful melody to go with that. Soon they reached the marvelous mud house. Ben was surprised. "But George, where's your house?" he asked. "Right here," George replied. "Mama George and I built it ourselves." "But George, where's your car?" "We use our feet," said George. "But George, where are your games?" George said, "I'll show you." He quickly began showing how much fun it was to play hide and seek among the corn and mango trees and make up games with pebbles and banana leaves. When was the last time you made up a game with pebbles and banana leaves? Been a long time. When it was time for dinner, both families gathered inside the marvelous mud house. There they sat, knees touching, as they savored plantain stew, ugali, and chapatis. George passed around sweet fried mandazis. Let's look. It shows us in the back of the book what all those are. What was the first one? Let's see. It was ugali. Ugali is a dough-like porridge made with maize flour, something like a corn porridge. Chapati is a flat, round bread similar to a tortilla. And then it said something about sweet fried mandazis. Mandazi is a Kenyan donut. Look at that. Isn't that neat? A lantern flickered on 9 smiling faces, and the walls rang with laughter. With full bellies, the Smith children looked round in wonder. In the mud house, to be surrounded by joy and love was enough, much more than the accumulation of stuff. That night, Ben's eyes watered as he hugged Mama George goodbye. Asante, he said in his best Swahili accent. That means thank you. He was thanking her for being such a gracious hostess. The next day, as the Smiths flew back across the ocean, Ben thought about the marvelous mud house and how full it seemed. Full of fun and laughter and friendship, full of Mama George's faith and her joyful songs, full of and suddenly, I was going to read the same sentence twice, which it might be worth reading twice. Full of Mama George's faith and her joyful songs. That's how full their house was. And suddenly he remembered what it felt like to be full too. Back at home, something seemed different at the hungry ranch house. The children rarely asked for more things at the store, and they all hugged each other a little bit more. We don't need so much stuff, they said. A little is enough. Let's help George go to school instead. What a great idea. Olivia said, I can babysit. Ruth said, I can have a bake sale. Thomas said, I can rake leaves. Mom and Dad said, we can get a smaller car. Ben said, I can sell some of my toys. Tucker said, I can stand on my head, which he promptly demonstrated, of course. Then he giggled, or I can feed people's pets. And they all sang, we're rich in Christ, rich in love, strength, and life. The giver of these hears every cry. Let's lift up our hands to the God who provides. Back in Kenya, George still thought about going to school. He planted more and more corn, but he and Mama George still did not have the money to pay school fees. He wondered if Mama was right to trust God to help. But Mama George continued to pray, Lord, will you help us? Then one day, Mama George received a letter from far away. She carefully opened it and read. Ooh, who do you think the letter was from? Let's see. You taught us so much, and we want to bless you. Please use this money to send George to school. Your friends, the Smiths. Wow, they sent that money from America. Mama George began to cry, not tears of sadness, but of joy. She skipped down the side of the mountain and leapt up the side of the next mountain, hurrying to find George. Mama, what's wrong? Why do you run so fast? George asked. Mama George read the letter aloud. George, God has provided for us, she cried. I'm going to school, George squealed. He wrapped his arms tight round his mother and let out a great big whoop and a holler. George is excited. He finally gets to go to school. 2 houses that night rang with laughter and dance. One marvelous mud house on a mountain and one happy house on a ranch. That is a great story, isn't it? And it reminds us of a very important biblical principle. Paul writes to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6. This is what he says. He says, verse 6, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." Do you know what it means to be content? It means to be happy with what you already have. That is contentment. You don't keep wanting more and more. You're content with whatever you get. Maybe you wanted something more. It's not bad to want something more, but you're okay. You're happy with what you got instead. "For we bring nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that." What a marvelous message for those folks back then and for us folks today. That we can be content if we're clothed and if we're eating, if we have a roof over our head, a bed to sleep in, if we can go to school, if we can go to church, if we can do the things that we need to do and want to do, and we have everything we absolutely need in life, we should be content with that. But some of us don't do that, do we? We always want more. I want more shirts or more pants, or I want more shoes or more toys. I want more. I want more money. I want something bigger, something better. But Paul reminds us that with godliness is great contentment. We don't need anything more than what we absolutely have to have in life, and God. As long as we have Him, we have everything we need. That's what this story reminds us of. It's a story of finding fullness and joy. You know, George and his mom didn't find fullness and joy in stuff, did they? They found fullness in God. And so I hope that you can too. Hope that you're having a great rest of the day. Remember, today's May the 4th, so I've got my shirt on. It says, "Come to the green side." You got kind of the lightsaber there with Kermit. This is kind of a, crossover from Star Wars to Muppets. And it's fun. Anyway, I got this shirt as a gift, and so I love it. I wear it all the time. But hope that you're having a great rest of the day, that you have a wonderful night, and I cannot wait to see you again. Miss Lindsay and I love you very much. We hope to see you soon. Bye.